They searched the corridor, but there was nobody there. Later that night, the telephone beside my bed rang. A man on the other end whispered, "Why are you looking for me? Get out of my room." I was staying in Manchester for one night. I had an early meeting the following morning, and rather than getting the first train in, my company agreed to pay for a hotel. From the outside, it looked like it had been an office building, 6 stories of stained brick, narrow windows, and an illuminated sign above the entrance with 2 of its letters no longer working. The photographs online had obviously been taken years earlier. The reception area smelled of disinfectant and old cigarette smoke. There was a vending machine with most of its selections empty, a cracked leather sofa, and a security camera pointing down from one corner. The receptionist was a young man who barely looked up from his phone. He handed me a key card. 314, 3rd floor, lifts on your left. That was it. No breakfast information, no checkout time, not even a warning that the lift sounded like it had been pulled upwards by a length of rusty chain. The 3rd floor was completely silent when I stepped out. The corridor was long and narrow, with faded patterned carpet, with dull yellow lighting. My room was almost at the very end, opposite room 315. There were at least 20 rooms on that floor, but I didn't see another person. Room 314 was about what I expected. Small bed, small desk, a television bolted to the wall, a bathroom where you could practically brush your teeth while sitting on the toilet. There was window, but it faced directly onto a brick wall of another building. Still, it was clean enough. I dropped my bag on the floor, changed my shirt, went out for something to eat. I came back shortly after 10. I went upstairs, locked my door, and watched television for about an hour. At around 11:30, I turned everything off and tried to sleep. I'd probably been lying there for 20 minutes when someone tried my door handle. Not knocked, not tapped. They pushed the handle all the way down and pulled. The door gave a sharp rattle against the lock. I sat up immediately. For a few seconds there was silence. Then the handle moved again, slower this time, down, up, down again. I assumed another guest had the wrong room. It happens, so I called out, "Sorry, this one occupied." The handle stopped moving. I waited to hear footsteps walking away. Instead, somebody pushed against the door, not hard enough to break it. Just a slow, steady pressure that made the wood creak in its frame. "Hello?" No answer. I got out of bed and approached the door, but I didn't open it. There was no proper peephole, just a scratched metal fitting that had been painted over at some point. "Wrong room," I said, louder this time. The pressure disappeared. A few moments later, I heard footsteps moving quickly along the corridor. I waited another minute before calling reception. The phone beside the bed looked about 30 years old. There was a faded sticker telling guests to press 0. The receptionist answered after several rings. "Someone's been trying to get into my room," I told him. He sounded more annoyed than concerned. "Which room?" 314. "Probably because someone got the wrong room. They tried it 3 times. They then pushed against it." He sighed. "I'll come and have a look." 2 or 3 minutes later, there was a knock. This time, the receptionist announced himself. I opened the door with the security chain still attached and checked it was him before letting him in. He looked up and down the corridor. There was no one there. He even tried the doors to the nearby stairwell and checked the small housekeeping cupboard beside the lift. Nothing. Maybe they went back to the room, he said. Can you check the cameras? There's no cameras on the floors, only reception and outside. That didn't make me feel any better. He told me to call again if it happened, then return downstairs. I locked the door behind him, pushed the chair from the desk underneath the handle, and got back into bed. For about 10 minutes everything was quiet. I had just begun convincing myself it had been a drunk guest when I heard something scrape across the carpet outside. I stopped directly in front of my door. Then a piece of paper slid through the gap underneath. I stared at it from the bed. It was a torn section of the hotel notepaper, folded once. 4 words had been written in thick black pen. You're in my room. Not your, just the letters U and R. I went straight to the door and pulled the chain back. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe someone crouching outside, waiting for me to look. I opened the door quickly. The corridor was empty. Who's there? A door opened behind me. I spun around. The man in room 315 stood in the doorway wearing a t-shirt and boxer shorts. Did you see someone outside my room? No. Someone just pushed a note under my door. He looked down the corridor. What did it say? I showed him. His expression changed slightly, not fear, more like he thought I was a strange one. Nothing to do with me, he said. I didn't say it was. Well, I've got to go to sleep. He shut the door. Suddenly I became aware that I was standing barefoot in a hotel corridor, holding a threatening note and accusing people of watching my room. I went back inside and locked the door. This time I called reception and demanded another room. The reception told me the hotel was full. I asked him to come upstairs again. He said he couldn't leave the desk because he was now alone in the building. I told him I wanted to leave. He reminded me that my booking was non-refundable. That was the least of my worries, but I didn't fancy wandering through Manchester carrying a suitcase at midnight, trying to find another hotel that wasn't charging £200. So I stayed. At 12:47, the room phone rang. The sound nearly made me jump out of my bed. I stared at it. Only reception knew which room I was in. I picked it up. Hello? At first all I could hear was breathing, slow and heavy. Then a man spoke. His voice was low and strangely calm. Why are you looking for me? I didn't answer. Get out of my room. The line went dead. I immediately pressed 0. Reception answered. Did you just call me? I asked. No. Someone called this room. Probably another guest dialed the wrong number. They told me to get out of my room. There was a pause. Then who just called me? I don't know. For the first time that night he sounded unsettled. He came upstairs again, reluctantly, bringing a large ring of keys. He checked the corridor, knocked on several doors. No one admitted to knowing anything about the note or the call. He inspected the telephone and even unplugged it from the wall. Then he offered to sit me in reception until morning. I considered it. I decided to remain inside. The receptionist told me he would check the floor every hour. He didn't. I needed to sleep. I couldn't. Every sound of the building made me tense. Pipes knocking against the wall, the lift groaning, a television playing somewhere nearby. At about 3 a.m, I heard footsteps pass my room and stop outside. They remained there for almost a minute. No knock, no attempting the handle, just somebody standing on the other side of the door. Then the footsteps continued towards the stairwell. At 5:30 I had enough. The sky outside had begun turning grey, although my window only shone a faint strip of light above the opposite wall. I packed my things and checked the corridor. It was empty. A different receptionist was behind the desk. I reached the ground floor. An older woman this time. I placed the key cards in front of her and told her I was checking out. "You're early," she said. I briefly explained what had happened. The attempts to enter my room, the note, the telephone call. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at the room number written on the card sleeve. 314. Yes, she frowned. "What did the man on reception say?" "He told me the hotel was full." She looked towards the computer screen. "We weren't full last night." I felt a cold sensation through my stomach. She typed something. "There were 6 empty rooms on the 3rd floor." "Why would we tell me that?" "I don't know," said the receptionist. "Young man, black shirt." She nodded. "That's right, he's the agency worker." That explanation should have made me feel better. It didn't. I gave her my phone number and left. As soon as I stepped outside, I felt stupid for being frightened all night. I went to my meeting and travelled home later that afternoon. The hotel manager called me 2 days later. He apologised and said they were investigating. He confirmed that a temporary agency worker had been covering that night. He also confirmed that several rooms had been available. He couldn't explain why I hadn't been moved. 4 days later, after my stay, I was sitting at home when my phone vibrated. It was a text from an unknown number. There were no previous messages, no name, no photograph. Just one sentence. "You left my room in such a mess." I stared at it for several seconds before calling the number. The call didn't connect. A recorded voice told me the number wasn't recognized.